This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
If you don't feel fear, you're probably going to die. It's like you say, it's your central nervous system reining you in, making sure everything's going to be okay. Existential threat. Fear is wetting your pants. Courage is taking action in wet pants. Everybody wets their pants, but it stops some people. Just don't be stopped by your fear.
Man, a long time ago in a life, it feels like a long.
Sing that. A long
time.
ago.
I don't think the guest wins if I'm. I think you sing.
I'm the worst singer on the planet. I can't believe it.
No, I love. Well, that was courageous. What a great place to start, right? In the spirit of people have probably read some of the notes and have seen now your name. And instead of me doing a fancy big open, I'm actually going to start by asking, do you remember us originally meeting?
Yeah, I remember working with you and your two partners. I forget the name of the firm. You say it, it'll come to me.
It was IDEA.
Yeah, IDEA, right.
And you came in and it was win without pitching. And we were like, no, we were so not in alignment. And I'm sure you kind of knew it. How often does it happen when you walk into a team? It's like, I kind of know the problem, but I'm not sure if this is the right vehicle to share the information.
Wait, so let me just to clarify, get some clarity on the question. When you said you weren't in alignment, do you mean the three of you internally were not aligned?
Yeah, we always had different ideas. There was always
three owners, right? Three partners. It's they're not always going to be aligned on everything. I had an interesting sales call yesterday with three members of senior leadership team, and the owner of the business wasn't there. And they're like, yeah, we need to do this, but we got he'll pay for it. And I'm like, well, that's one thing for him to pay for it. He's got to go through the training, where I'm not doing this if he's not involved, because they're basically trying to shape things and he's the creative person, sole owner. It's full discretion. It's his business. He gets to do what he wants. There's no point in spending all this money getting people aligned philosophically to what we do to have the person at the top not aligned. So, and when it comes to multiple partners, yeah, you've got to be aligned. So what was your question? How often does that happen often?
I want to know the percentages.
I don't know the percentages, but my podcast co-host is a good friend of mine, David C. Baker. The first time years ago, I was working with a firm in New Jersey and two partners. The dynamics were a little bit weird, but I couldn't put my finger on what was going on. And I said, not for the first time, sorry, it was the first time, but not for the last time. I said, hey, there's something going on here. I can't figure it out, but it's like, for some reason, I'm not able to help you guys. I recommend you bring this guy in and do a total business review. And so they did. And then a few weeks later, I'm talking to Mr. Baker and I said, hey, whatever happened to those guys that I sent to you? He goes, oh, they split up. And I went, what? He said, oh yeah, they never should have been in business together. I told them to split up and they did. So it's not uncommon. And I've heard other people tell that story too. So alignment's important. And it's not when people aren't aligned on a philosophy or an ideology, it's not like anybody's wrong necessarily. But if you want to embrace change, you have to be ideologically aligned.
Yeah. Look, my number one personal value is optimism. So probably not surprising. I'm like, I really wouldn't change a day of the experience. Like, I learned so much about being a leader where I was a bad leader, how I could become a better leader. It's amazing when you meet people that are willing to follow you and come with you. It's amazing how much you learn from them when you give up the reins and you give people permission to do what they do best. There's not much I would change. I mean, I think my old partners would feel differently if I'm like, hey, let's bring them on the call right now right. And it's not to vilify them, but I just think.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I have a surprise for you.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we
Guys,
go.
come on in.
Come on in. That'd be awesome. It was like the two heads. Sort of.
There's a podcast.
That's a podcast idea for you. Anyway, and it brought me to you. It brought me to your work. And I think in life I continue to run into your magic and your thoughtful commentary, and you make us all better. I'd love to hear the almost the unfairly, like as you've kind of skipped the rock across the pond into all the different lives of Blair. How do you feel like? What would you describe as your act one? If you only had to do it in 3 acts, this is just corporate Blair, by the way. What would you say was act one? When did you know you were leaving act one and be like, I'm evolving to act two? And then same thing to act three.
Yeah, that's a great question. So act one is me stumbling into advertising and by extension design after that for a little while. So creative firms, just kind of fell in love with, I fell into the business and I love creative people and they drive me crazy too. But I consider myself a creative person. I consider myself a writer and I could have been a very good copywriter, but I ended up on the business side of it. I wrote some copy for some ads over the years. Some of them were pretty good. So yeah, I fell in love with advertising and creative people and the creative professions. And it was like a parallel career where it was too much fun to actually be a job. Having said that, like a friend of mine, my first boss in this full service marketing communication firm that I worked at, it was a PR firm that bought an ad agency. He said of the competition, he said, they're kids playing at advertising. No, he said, they're kids playing at business. And I thought, oh, that's us. And I've always thought that's us. As I've aged, I'm 58 now, I go through advertising. I feel like the advertising profession is largely kids playing at business.
Yeah.
So that's act one.
All right. And then was there a moment that pivoted you into act two?
You know, the moment that pivoted me into act two, which was self-employment and launching Win Without Pitching as a solo consulting practice, wasn't really business related. It was personal. It was personal life related. So I've always lived in Canada. And at the time, I'm a dozen years into it was 10, but I ended up working in agencies for a dozen years. I'm about a dozen years in. My family had a cottage on a shore of a small lake 2 hours from where we lived in central Canada. And my parents sold it to finance an early retirement. And I wanted to buy it. My parents wanted me to buy it. And I have 3 siblings, but I think I was most in love with the place, but I couldn't afford to. We just had our first son. My wife and I were married. We just had our first child. And I realized if I can't, so this place, this refuge was leaving the family. And I couldn't afford to buy it. My parents couldn't afford to give me a break on it. And I thought, well, if I can't afford 2 homes, and at this point in my life, I can't, then I might as well live where I want to live. And so I decided I wanted to live in a small town on a lake in the mountains. And then, so I found this place that I've lived in ever since.
Wow.
I had to find a way to get here. I had to convince my wife to move here. My wife and 3 kids by the time we got here. And then we had a 4th one when we got here. But that was really a life change. And when my wife finally said, hey, why don't we move to Caslow? I thought, yes, I've done it. Like she finally caved in. I was working for an agency and my client was very successful. My biggest client, very successful entrepreneur. He owned 4 Ferraris and we're having kind of a goodbye lunch. And I told him what I was doing. And he said, man, I've always wanted to do what you're doing. He said, someday I want to have enough money to be able to do what you're doing. And he had lots of money. I know what he sold his last business for, many millions. He said, I don't mean to pry. Are you independently wealthy? And I said,
wow.
no, I'm not at all. It's not. it wasn't about the money. And I realized in that moment, I was willing to be poor to be happy. If that's what it took, if I had to be poor to be happy, that's fine. And that willingness to be poor to be happy made me freer than this person who'd had many millions. And we both had the same dream. He couldn't afford to do it because he didn't have enough money yet. I didn't have any money, but I didn't like I guess in that moment, I'm kind of telling a story that actually lasted 3 years, because in the beginning, it was just about, I can't live here. I've got to move. So we moved somewhere else. And then before we moved somewhere else, I found this place I wanted to get to. And my wife said, I'm not moving in that little town. In fact, I'm not leaving the city where she and I both grew up. I'm not leaving. I'm having babies. And then I convinced her to move halfway to this little town, to another city. Because I said, there are no more jobs for me in this place. If I want to keep moving up in advertising, I got to move to a bigger market. So when she agreed to move to this other city, Calgary, Alberta, I thought, okay, I'm halfway to Caslow. And then I got to Calgary.
Did you leave that part out to her? Did you not delicately maybe didn't tell her we're halfway there?
Yeah. And then I got to Calgary and I had kind of a pretty shitty employment experience. And it was like, I was just really, really unhappy and wanted to leave. And then by the time I had this client, I was on the verge of moving to Caslow. This is a long story. I apologize.
Oh, good.
Fired from the horrible job. That's a story. We were on the cusp of leaving and we found out we were pregnant with child number 3. So I got this job offer. I stuck around for a year turned into 20 months. It was a great agency, made me fall in love with the business again. I loved the guy I was working for. I liked my clients. This client of mine I was just talking about, he was great. But at some point I said, I got to go. My wife had said when things were really tough in that first job in Calgary, she said, let's just move to Caslow, raise our kids there. And then it just took us a little while to get there. So that was Act 2. I moved to Caslow with like, well, how am I going to earn a living? I launched Win Without Pitching as a solo consulting practice. So that's early 2000s. And I did that for about a dozen years. And I felt like I'd scaled this. So now on to Act 2 is I launched this business helping owners of independent creative firms get better at selling their ideas without giving them away for free. It's right there in the name of the business, Win Without Pitching. Yeah. And then at some point, Act 3 is November 2012. I'm supposed to fly to Taiwan to give a speech. And I get sick, in bed sick, this time with pneumonia. And it was the 4th time I'd been sick that year on 3 different continents. I was just working too hard, traveling too much. And I felt like I had maxed out the solo consultant business model. I thought, I can't make any more money, which is ridiculous now. And because I equated money with effort, right? As opposed to value creation. So I was like, I got to change my business model. So I changed it to a training company and hired some people and scaled up and quit being the person who delivered all of the IP. So that's Act 3, I guess. Maybe I'm at the beginning of Act 4. I wouldn't know how to characterize it now, but it feels like things have changed. I've quit pursuing the scale I was pursuing before and realized there's a sweet spot for this business. It is right where it is now. And I'm happy to run the business kind of at the size it is, even at the revenue level, and just focus on the growth is going to be me doing less of the things that I shouldn't be doing.
Right. Sounds like your Act 4 will call the sequel. We're into the sequel. But the sequel could be actually better than the original. And the original was pretty damn good too. Like, what a ride.
Oh, it's all been great. Everything's, it's all been great. Even the bad stuff is good. It's market research. It's learning. It's how you grow. It's part of the struggle. You don't get the good stuff without the bad stuff. So I don't know that if I could go back, I would change much.
I mean, I have 2 initial thoughts out of the gate. One is it would be really cool to be one of your kids and hear the lessons of the stories you have. Like, when you think about your kids, and I don't know if you're like me at all, but I do. I kind of feel like a squirrel, and I'm like collecting the nuts, but I want to be careful when I share the nuts with the kids, right? Like, oh, this is this story. okay, I've sort of been holding on to this story lesson, and now, drip, right? So, one, how old do you mind me asking how old the kids are? Like, what's the age ranges, and do they put up with your stories, or do they like, Dad, like, well, where are we here?
Well, one of them works in the business full time. One of them is a contractor to us. The other two have worked in the business part time previously. The one who works in the business full time, I think I love that. And my wife works in the business full time. So it's a pretty tight little family business these days. We have a lot of contractor coaches and other people, but the core it's all family right now. And that's fun. And I do like, I like him watching. It's not like I have lessons that I feel like I'm dying to impart to my kids.
Yeah.
I like him watching me struggle and get through stuff.
This is one of my largest worries. I mean, I think my kids are picking up, right? They're smarter than we ever give them credit for. They're sensing all this stuff. But I struggled deeply in New York City. Like I would have lived at, I was at one of the bigger networks, and it's funny to hear you talk about your journey into creativity. My first boss was like, "You're not in advertising; you're in creative business," and that always stood. It always stood with me. Yeah, I'm not. I wish more business people understood what creativity could do for the bottom line, and unfortunately, there's a lot of starving artists because creativity. It's like, have you figured out a way to monetize?
Yeah,
these ideas, right? But I worry. So that life was very hard, which I would say was my act one. Not poor me hard. I loved all of it. Like I said, I was committed. The people I got to learn from. Act two was when I met you. It was upside down world of San Diego, but still trying to be an agency. But for them, they're not trying to be an agency. They're just kids, and they're like growing up in this. It's like this Truman Show. It's always sunny, and it's like always nice and soft and easy in San Diego. Now, I'm sure in their heads that's not the case, but like you have to manufacture character building moments here. This is one of my biggest fears. Talk about fear and courage being siblings. My fear is, am I doing them a disservice growing up in a soft, safe bubble in a bubble? Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. On the one hand, you want your kids to have things, and I don't just mean material things, but all the good things that make life rich and easy in some way. I don't know why. But you want your kids to not have to struggle too hard, but all the growth is in the struggle, right? So I'm constantly torn with that too. Sometimes we spoil them.
Are there moments, because everyone's in the business, so do you declare when you're dad versus when you're CEO or whatever? Do you declare this is coming from dad version of me versus CEO version of me?
I think I'm pretty good about during the business day, et cetera. If the topic is business, it's all coworker and boss stuff. Like I won't be on a Zoom call with my kid who lives in a different market. I won't say at the end of the Zoom call, "Okay, I love you." But if we're having a call about something else, about a personal thing, I will end the call that way. But I won't do it in business. That's just a personal preference thing. My wife is blurrier that way. So we might be 3 or 4 of us might be in a call. "Okay, love you all." Which she would never say that to a non-family. Well, there's some very obviously people she's very close with, but she's not the type of person to say that in a business context. So it's blurrier to her. The lines are clearer to me about when dad version of me steps forward, and I'll say, "Hey, as your father." But it's pretty incredible. Like I'm really proud of him, and I do tell him that when I'm in father role of how good he is at his job. I remember, just a little segue, 4 kids. I've said to all of my kids at some point, "Hey, let's start a business together." And every single one of them had the same response. "How much are you going to pay me?" And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I want to take risk with you. I want you to learn to take risks. So I thought, none of them have the entrepreneur gene. And I don't know if this one who works in the business has the entrepreneur gene or not, but he has this rare thing that is an advisor to other businesses. I've only seen this a small number of times where you meet an employee who acts like an owner. He acts like an owner. He takes responsibility like an owner. And our managing director for 9 years, she used to be a client of mine, and that just leapt out at me. She was just an employee who took responsibility like an owner. And he's that way too. I think one of the great things about being an entrepreneur, let alone a family business, but like being an entrepreneur, I always loved the arguments or the heated conversations my wife and I would have at the dinner table, often around finance, business finance or personal finance, because you ride this roller coaster. And they were hard discussions, and my kids would have to sit through them. And they rarely commented on it, but I always thought, this is one of the best things I can teach them, that this is hard and it's rewarding and it's up and it's down, and you've got to have the stomach for it. And all these good things that we have, they could be maybe gone in a moment, or like there are moments when, there's just moments when it's, it's like everything's great and will always be great. And then not very long after, it's like, oh my God, are we going to survive? And that roller coaster ride, I've always loved having my kids have a front row seat to that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've asked questions. By the way, I Want to Take Risk with You might be the next title of your book. That's a nice little line there, right? I want to take risk with you, Blair. I'm in. And let's
talk. Like a pickup line. I might use in my early 20s. Hey, I'm Blair. I want to take a risk with you.
It's like, whoa, hey, slow down. Buy me a beer first, Blair. Come on.
Yeah.
I want to take risk with you. Yeah, it does. It sound. There's something there. There's something. I just got the URL. I now own the .com of that. Let's talk about all your book babies. And I'm curious if they also fall under Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. Was Act 1 sort of like the experience, which sort of launched Act 2, which was Win Without Pitching, and then so on and so on? Or do you see it that way, or not so much?
So the first book, the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, came out in 2010. I'd started the business in April of 2002. So it was, I don't know if you felt this pressure too, but I felt like when I was in business for myself as a consultant, I felt an incredible amount of pressure to get a book out.
The motives were not that way for me. Because the motives were, Win Without Pitching. I mean, in some ways it was, how do we compete from San Diego, right? Like the book, I thought I was writing to position that company off the premise of courageous ideas are the only ones that matter, right? And then I go on the journey, and everyone I meet has a lesson that I needed to learn, and the joke was on me. The book I thought was going to be a business card, a devious business card, not get a PhD in leadership, which is what it became. So, but I hear you and feel you on. I could see why you'd feel that way. It makes a lot of sense. And like that becomes like, oh, he must be really good at what he does. He's got a book, this antiquated thing that still happens to work very well.
Yeah. And you probably had my first book that I don't even talk about anymore. I co-authored it with somebody else. It was just called Win Without Pitching. It was a big blue binder.
God.
And I was doing a talk in Edinburgh, Scotland about, I don't know, time's funny, 3-4 years ago. It was in an agency. A guy just sold his agency to one of the big consulting companies, and he had offered to host this thing for another group. At the end of the talk, I'm having a chat with this guy, and he goes, I have your first book. Then I go, the Win Without Pitching Manifesto? He goes, no, the blue one. And I went, oh, I don't have one. So we went upstairs and took a picture of it. So there's that book. So that's when I wanted to become a consultant. I thought, well, how do you do this? Well, first of all, you write out everything you know. And then I thought, well, there's a book here. So I had this book and I charged $1,000 for it, $995 for it. And that launched the practice. But I felt I needed to get like a regular, proper book out there into the world. And so I was always thinking about the book, and I didn't know, what, I don't want to write a book of lists. And I experimented in this. I did a blog post called 12 Proclamations for the New Year, probably around 2008. And I wrote it in this like aphoristic style, kind of big over the top, we shall, these big proclamations. And I was so nervous about the tone of it. And then I pressed send on that and I got so much positive feedback. So that I ended up blowing that up into the book. That was 2010. And it's a manifesto. It's a rallying cry. And I always wanted to write a manifesto. I love manifestos.
Yeah. That's an agency word if I've ever heard it, you know?
Manifesto.
Yeah, you don't really hear that word at most dinner tables, but every agency human knows what's the manifesto. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the first book, baby, and that's 2010. And it's sold over 100,000 copies now, and annual sales keep going up, and which it shocks me because I always knew it would do well. Deep down, I knew it would do well, but it's a pretty niche world. And to hit 100,000, and I expect it's going to keep going. It touched a nerve, clearly, and it propelled the business forward. And then 2018, I published Pricing Creativity, A Guide to Profit Beyond the Billable Hour. That was more, it's not a manifesto, it's here's how to.
Mm-hmm.
I had learned, like you said, you thought you were doing one thing, you ended up getting a PhD in another. I had a realization I didn't know anything about pricing and value. And I thought, I'll just read some books. How hard can this be? And I realized, oh my God, this is a rabbit hole. And so I ended up absorbing like the canon of literature on pricing and then started teaching it and then turned that into a book.
That was what year?
2018, January 2018. So coming up on, was that 8 years?
I think the last time we hung out, I had you come down and speak in San Diego. I think it was on this.
I think so too.
You had just launched this book.
Yeah.
It's unfair to do this, but in spirit of Cliff Notes version, if there was like one big, okay, guys, I've got 1 minute of your time in the car, then you got to wrap and you got to go in and do your day job. Give them one snippet on that book, like one, because you said like your whole world got turned upside down on what you thought you knew versus how to actually do it. What's your 1 minute of wisdom?
One broad piece of wisdom, one very specific piece of advice. The broad piece is pricing is a prison cell of your own making in your own mind. You think you're trapped in this narrow range. Everybody's trapped in a narrow range. Everybody's range is different than yours. That should tell you something. Right? So that's the broad piece of advice. The specific thing that if you're not doing this, like you just start doing this as of today. Next proposal you put forward, instead of like what I call a take it or leave it proposal. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the price. One option. Give the client 3 options at 3 different price points.
Give them options. That's it.
Your closing ratio goes up. Your average proposal value goes up. Like ding, ding. It's the lowest hanging fruit on the profit tree. 3 options, not 1, 3. And we could get into the why. There's actually a few different reasons why, but it's like just people who do this have a way higher closing ratio and your average proposal value will go up too. And have the cheapest, if the client has a budget, have that be the cheapest option. Here's what we could do for your budget. Here's what we could do for more. Here's what we could do for a lot more to get you to think big. And one more piece of advice, anchor high. Start with the most, when you present the proposal, start with the most expensive one. There are 2 of the 6 basic rules in that book right there. Just follow those 2. 3 options, anchor high, start with the most expensive one.
This is great stuff. I'm thinking about a proposal that we're writing. I'm like, can you please go listen to the podcast we just had with Blair? Just go to minute 27 and take it from there. The where you started about the prison, though, that's so much bigger in my experience. Like when I think about it through the lens of courage, like this is so everybody is stuck. Like everybody's afraid. Everyone is stuck in their head. Everyone thinks that they're the only one that has this fear. And it's like, no, like nothing could be more normal than a central nervous system designed to keep you safe. That's all it's trying to do. It's like, thank you, central nervous system, for being here. No, I'm passing on this one. But so when you were talking about that prison cell, it made me just think of, and again, I went to television radio school, Blair. Like I had to go talk to people about this stuff. That's where I went. I was like, oh, wow, it sounds eerily similar to how normal fear is. Do you still get fear? Like, do you still feel, oh shit, why? What am I doing putting myself through this next book or this next chapter, this next act?
Yeah, I feel fear. I'm a big fan of Dan's. I have his book right here, or one of his many books, Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach. And I may have thrown this quote at you. Fear is wetting your pants. Courage is taking action in wet pants. Everybody wets their pants, right? Like, but it stops some people. Just don't be stopped by your fear. It's not like you want to get to the place where you don't feel, if you don't feel fear, you're probably going to die, right? If you feel no fear, if you're fearless, fear's there. It's like you say, it's your central nervous system, right? Reining you in, making sure everything's going to be okay. Existential threat.
Yeah, I'm more of this is those who listen know that I'm not really a fearless guy. I'm more a fear more guy. Let's Jedi the fear, but let's address it versus suppress it and normalize it and honor it, and then but do it anyway. Or as Sullivan says, yes, those pants are wet. Here we go. Right? Like, all right. So I'm not saying it's directly connected to Act 4, but let's talk about let's keep going on the book babies.
Yeah. So pricing creativity was my PhD in pricing. And I'm due to rewrite that book because what I know about pricing now that is not in that book could fill another book.
Mm.
But the latest act, just a couple weeks ago, my latest book dropped. It's called The 4 Conversations, a New Model for Selling Expertise. I feel like this is the sequel to the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, but it's also got a bunch of pricing guidance in it too. It is the here's how to follow up. You read the proclamations, you get all inspired and ask yourself, well, like, what do I do? How do I behave? What do I do with these ideas? You need a model. So this is a, like the subtitle says, it's a model for selling expertise. It's a combination of frameworks and principles. Frameworks are the tools that you use to navigate through the conversations, and principles are the ideas that you embody as you're doing so. And the premise of the book is that I think selling not just creativity, but any form of expertise where you are the expert advisor or practitioner who will deliver on that expertise in the engagement. If you are selling your own expertise that you will later deliver, then the sale is the sample of the engagement to follow. The client is trying on what it will be like to work with you. How you conduct yourself in sale is vitally important. Unlike these other domains where, you're buying SaaS or something and you don't like the salesperson, you don't like the pushy sales tactics, whatever. You look past that because that salesperson's behavior says nothing about the product that they're buying. But when you're selling expertise, and in particular expertise that you're going to deliver, how you sell says everything about how the engagement is going to be shaped, including which position you will occupy in the relationship. And I do in the book, I'll make this generalization. There are only 2 roles you can play. You can play the role of the expert or the role of a vendor. And so I see the sale as a little bit of a battle, a polite battle for you to move from vendor position to the expert position. And it's this basic idea that if you don't lead in the sale, you will not be allowed to lead in the engagement. So I believe there's a lot about selling that's universal that applies to no matter what you're selling, but there's a lot that isn't universal. And not every sales tactic or philosophy translates to the domain of selling expertise.
As you tiptoe into these universes, like when you find yourself in an opportunity to follow your own principles, right? Do you have a postmortem with yourself? Like, do you have like an actual, is that part of your process where you're, okay, before I do anything else, let me audit. Did I actually land, or I left myself in the land of vendor versus expert?
One of our core values is do what we say. So we sell the way we advocate that selling should be sold. And we also, if you want to, and pricing in particular, if you're going to value price, you need to adopt the tool that is known as the after action review. And I get this idea from Ron Baker, who's a bit of a genius on the subject of pricing. This after action review goes hand in hand with value-based pricing because you think of it this way. You're almost always, when you're pricing based on value rather than cost, time, you almost always get it wrong. And you have to accept that you're getting the pricing wrong, and that the next one will be less wrong. And how do you make the next one less wrong? You review each engagement afterwards, and you should apply this to proposals that you delivered that you didn't win. And then if you do win, then you review the engagement afterwards, and you ask yourself, okay, we priced it at X. We created this much value, Y value for the client in the world, and our costs were like Z, right? Knowing what we know now afterwards, what would we have done differently? What would we have charged? How would we have scoped it differently? How would our costs have been different? And so I think that's an approach that everybody should take when it comes to selling and pricing, specifically if you're pricing based on value.
I kind of feel like we buried the lead here, which is congratulations on the new book. Like this is, you know what I mean? Like, did you always, the process of writing this one, I kind of vaguely remember you mentioning, I could totally be having this wrong, but I feel like the concept of the 4 conversations did you share that at all when you were down here in San Diego?
Yeah, it's basically our whole system in a book. I'm taking what, if you were, so I don't remember how much has changed since I worked with you guys in San Diego. A bunch has, a lot of it you would recognize, but our model that we teach in our workshops is the 4 conversations. This idea that you view the sale as a series of 4 linear, discrete conversations, which isn't always true. It's just helpful to view it that way. So I've taken essentially our training program and put it into a book. And so if you've been through the workshop since 2018 or so, you would just look at it and go, yeah, this is everything we talked about and practiced and did exercises on.
I feel like this is a very like my inner mother is showing up, but it's like, are you proud of like what you've done? Like, do you step back and look back at like, I mean, I don't think I know how important value is. Like, you're clearly providing immense value to people who are willing and open to being coachable. Like, so when you step back and look at this, like, let's just say you were like, you know what? I'm going to retire tomorrow. You've got your place, right? Kids are going to take over, and you're just sort of, let's say it's one of the 3 warm days in Canada, right? You're at the rocking chair. Like, I had to go there, right? And you're like, you're kind of contemplating on what can you look back at what you've built and been like, how amazing? Or are you just so laser focused on helping people? Let's make sure we're doing this right. Before I die, I need to make sure everybody knows about this. Like, where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I'm somewhere in between, in different places and different days. I do get a lot of positive feedback from people who've read the books or listened to the podcast or have been through training. I'm really lucky that way. My wife is often saying to me, you get so much positive affirmation. Like, most people don't get that amount of positive affirmation. And I love it. And I feel very grateful. But I'm pretty, like most entrepreneurs, I'm pretty focused on the thing I'm striving towards, which is, without having any real specific targets. I have had specific targets, but I'm learning to let go of them. I want to keep growing. I want to get better. I want to have an impact on more people. So the target is just growth across every dimension. I sometimes say this business has been good to me, but I haven't been good to it. I feel like it should be a lot larger, but I'm done trying to force it to be larger. It seems to have found it's the right size in the universe, and I've kind of fit everything else to the right size. But I guess I say I'm not done. I don't know that I'll ever feel like I'm done. It's my plan to never retire.
But it sounds like there's joy, but it's in the journey of the, are we really adding value? Is there growth for you and for your clients?
Yeah, and I think so much of like my mental energy is around optimizing the business model. I think if I ever solved that, even if it's something that can be solved, if I ever felt like, oh, this is perfect, then I might go, okay, well, No struggle, no joy. I'll go do something else.
Books, for many, not for all, but for many, I feel are kind of like, this is why I said they're children. Like you have a child and you're like, that was, and it's not even fair as the guy, right? But like, that was painful. That was,
Yeah.
we're not doing this again. Like that was it. And then you forget, right? And you're like, well, it's been a couple of years. Like, they need a friend. Let's do, you know what? Let's do it again. And then the second child.
Two guys talking about this, but my wife and I have had this conversation. Pain is transient. You forget the pain of labor. I was 9 months pregnant with this book for 2 years. Like this book was 10 years in the conception, 4 or 5 years in the writing. I'm a horrible writer of books. It is the most painful and most rewarding thing that I do. I'm like, book's been out for a couple of weeks. I'm still not at the point where I'm enjoying it. I'm just like happy to be done the process. I'm not good at the process. I'm happy with the outcome, but the process is I don't know. I have friends who write books, good books quickly, and I'm not one of those people.
I'm not one of those people. No, and I'm kind of, I have a new book coming out at the end of next year about, I think if you're lazy, it's self-talk, but really it's team talk. And it's like, it's very lonely to be the leader. And it's even more lonely when you lose your team. And it looks at how to help teams get clear. And this is not a promotion for that. It's to get, the irony is I wrote that with a few partners. You want to talk about painful? That's painful. Trying to get us all aligned in one voice and making it seamless. There's a book I want to write. There's the book I've always saw as the sequel to Return on Courage that I can't stop thinking about. And I've got to put a process in place. And so I know that's my next year. That's my birth of next year is writing that book. And I'm terrified and exhausted. So what already, like what, I know you said you didn't love process, but what feedback or advice do you have for me? It could be like ritualize your writing process or don't write if you're not ready, or I don't know. You tell me. I'll take any feedback you have.
I don't know. Like people ask me how questions around how do you write a book and like how do you write and when do you write, and it's like I've tried everything. Nothing works. Like I'm a horrible advertisement for authorship. Like nothing works. Write every day. Yeah. And then, so I try to write every day and I get in a groove where I do write every day. And so write in the morning before you even check your email, just block off sections during the day and then chunks, like go away to write. That's a good one. Go away to write. My friend David Baker.
Yeah.
He goes away like 3 days a week. He's got this big fancy RV and he shuts everything off and he just works for 4 or 5 hours a day. And then he checks his email at the end of the day. That's a great way to do it. Now, so I can give you the answers. Have I been able to do these things? Not routinely. I don't know. I don't know how to write a book. I've written 3, I guess 4 of them now. I don't know how to do it.
You said there's a rewrite maybe that's coming. Does that terrify you? Or do you think like that's the next project?
No, that one doesn't terrify me. I have a book out there. You can still buy it. That when it came out, it was great because it was everything that I knew. And now I look at it and I think it's far from great because I know so much more. So I feel that one's an obligation. So I'm writing that one next. It doesn't scare me. It's like, it's something I have to correct. There's this idea of the curse of knowledge. Once you have something, you assume everybody else has it. I know something, I say it to you, I assume you have it. I have enough conversations with enough people. I feel like the world knows everything that I know. And the reality is that book, Pricing Creativity, most people would buy it now. If you're looking for a pricing book and you buy it and it's like, there's going to be some like revolutionary stuff in there for you. But there are some other things that aren't in it, and not just other things, other ways to think about things, other examples. Yeah, I just feel like I have an obligation to that child to put it through college. I don't know what the metaphor is, but to do something for it. And then I'm already looking past that to the next book, which I won't talk about. And I think that next book could be out in 2 or 3 years, which probably means it's like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. I'm a slow writer of books.
Hey man, it's really good to see you. And it's just, I love how the world works where, you're just locked in on what you're doing and I'm messy doing what I'm trying to do. And, I think how this came about was an algorithm decided to have, the 4 conversations you talking about that book land in my feed. I'm like, I haven't talked to Blair in years and this is so great. And keep doing what you're doing. If someone is still here, like we're in their ears, they're on their elliptical, they're walking in their neighborhood, they're in their car. Obviously, they're invested in this conversation. And so I'd love to kind of turn this over to you. Like, yes, it's called the Courageous Podcast. You have a very specific niche that you play in. What's the best way to wrap today? How would you like to wrap with the audience?
I think courage is a really important topic when it comes to selling, because the people that go through our training program, most of them are experts first and salespeople second. A lot of them don't even like selling. Certainly not all of them, maybe not even the majority, but enough of them really are just uncomfortable with it. And this idea of courage is, I think you said like more fear, like go into the fear basically. I would, if you're afraid of selling, I would have you examine that fear. What is it that you're afraid of? And I suspect for many listeners, the root of the fear is the same fear I had, which is a misunderstanding of what it means to sell. You think we've all been on the buying side of shitty sales experiences, right? So we know what a bad sales experience looks like, and we're kind of cringe and we don't want to be that person. Well, that person was misguided, mistrained, or their incentives were improperly aligned or aligned to the wrong goal. Selling shouldn't be about talking people into things. It should be about looking for the next person that you can help, having an adult grown-up conversation. And I would just encourage people to take those people who don't like the S word, selling or sales. And I think there are a lot of advisors and practitioners who don't like it. I would encourage you to take it back, look at it differently, see that it means something than maybe what you thought it meant, and see if you can't kind of take back that word. It should be an honorable word and an honorable profession.
Love it. I have a keynote that will be coming out right around this time. And with your permission, I'd like to just pull that entire audio clip and share it with the audience.
It would be my honor.
Awesome. Blair, so good to see you. Congrats. I'll have you back on in 11 years when the next book is done. And I get to Banff every once in a while. How close are you to Banff?
You can hike to my place from Banff in 5 days.
Okay, I'll pack warm.
I'll send you the directions. Ryan, it's so great to see you. Let's not wait however long it's been until our next conversation.
Guys, check out the 4 conversations. Probably available everywhere. I know it's available on Amazon. Where do you want to drive people to?
Yeah, they can buy the book on Amazon. If you want to learn more about our training program or my books, go to winwithoutpitching.com. The pricing book, Pricing Creativity, A Guide to Profit Beyond the Billable Hour, is only available on our website. The other 2 books are available at Amazon.
And if I want to get the blue copy of Win Without Pitching, is that a 5-day hike as well?
You got to hunt down the guy in Scotland who's got one. The only one left.
All right,
David
Blair,
Baker has 2.
That sounds like an auction waiting to happen. All right, man.
It does, doesn't it?
Good to see you, Blair.
Yeah, you too, Ryan.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.